Good evening. After a two-day manhunt, 2 sleepless nights, law enforcement have apprehended Vance Bolter. That's 48 hours that law enforcement involved in a complex and dangerous manhunt.
Tim Walz. I don't know who thought he was a good idea. He was like a second iteration of Tim Kaine, but even worse. He turned out to be a pathologist.
Picture this. Tim Walz thinks he's playing a master game of chess, but Lindy Lee just slammed the board, snatched the queen, and started juggling pawns while sipping tea. This isn't politics anymore. It's a roast, a meltdown, and a plot twist that even Netflix couldn't dream up. If you thought Walz had secrets locked away tighter than Fort Knox, think again. Lindy Lee showed up with the keys, a flashlight, and a bucket of popcorn. Get ready, because this one's about to get wild.
These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. I use this line on this, just mind your own business on this. Things worked best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us.
He was trafficking in lies and conspiracies. He said that he never supported a national abortion ban. We have in writing a screenshot from his website wherein he supported a national abortion ban. So he was just lying with him.
If you're enjoying this, hit that subscribe button. It helps more than you think. Tim Walz was cruising into 2025, convinced his perfectly pressed, Midwestern nice image was untouchable. He was like political comfort food, plain, predictable, but safe. Then along came Lindy Lee, who didn't knock politely on his polished persona. She bulldozed right through it with sarcasm sharp enough to slice cheddar. Suddenly, the governor's spotless reputation looked less like a warm casserole and more like leftovers forgotten in the fridge. Soft, suspicious, and smelling worse the longer it sat out.
Who could possibly think it would be a good idea to lie about being in Tiananmen Square when you were in Nebraska? I mean, come on, it's just so beyond the pale. And now he's thinking about running for president. Didn't he get the memo that the American people do not want a second coming of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz? And Kamala is in California considering a run for governor. We do not want any more DEI woke, any of that. We just don't. We're done with the woke and trans insanity.
Walz's whole persona has been one giant branding act, a calm, steady leader assuring everyone things are fine while the house burns behind him. He's the kind of guy who'd smile, pat your shoulder, and say, "Don't worry, I've got this handled," as your Wi-Fi cuts out, the fridge dies, and a raccoon lights your garage on fire. Smooth reassurance on the surface, chaos underneath. That's the illusion Lindy Lee just shattered. And now everyone can't stop watching the mess unfold.
What were they telling your mom, and how soon was it after the election? Like
a week or two. When it wasn't at that point, I was just asking questions. Like it wasn't even. I was like, what happened to the $2.5 billion we raised? Why did we spend it on Beyonce? Why did we spend 2.5? Why did we spend millions of dollars on Oprah? Like legitimate questions that needed to be answered. But the amount of hate I got for that was just overwhelming. And the final straw, the moment that I knew that I needed to leave, was actually around Christmas.
To truly get the roast, you've got to understand the costume. Walz built his image like a political IKEA shelf, plain, practical, and just sturdy enough to hold a few family photos. But don't inspect too closely, or the whole thing starts to wobble. He's the teacher turned politician, the friendly neighbor you'd trust to water your plants, the dad joke guy who also commands the National Guard. On paper, it sounds perfect, but in reality, it's the kind of setup that falls apart once someone notices the screws don't match and the wood is cheap particle board. And that someone, this time, was Lindy Lee.
And then the biggest tell of the evening was when he told the moderators, well, I thought the rules stipulated, or something to the effect of the rules were saying that you weren't going to fact check. And you talked about own goals. That was an own goal. That said everything.
But
so
Lindy,
he was counting on the fact that no one was going to push back.
Are you frustrated then that Walz didn't make the argument that you're making to me right now?
I think he did a really good job tonight, and we had a live focus group.
She looked at Walz's record and basically said, "Nice mask, what's under it?" And wow, the receipts started flying. While Walz has been presenting himself as the calm hand on the wheel, the car has swerved more times than a teenager learning to drive stick. His COVID policies were a masterclass in confusion. Shut it down, open it up, lock it again, then shrug when everyone got lost. He sold himself as pragmatic, but his version of strategy looked more like flipping flipping a coin and calling it leadership. And crime, don't even start. Walz tried to dance between reform and law and order until he ended up soaked in his own contradictions. While he clung to talking points, the headlines told a different story, one that didn't fit his bedtime tale of steady leadership. The beauty of Lindy's takedown is that she didn't stop at contradictions. She sprinkled sarcasm like hot sauce, exposing hypocrisy you can't unsee. Walz claimed the moral high ground while cozying up so tightly to insiders, he could have been part of the furniture at DC cocktail hours. He markets himself as grassroots, but you'd need a telescope to find those roots buried beneath layers of establishment gloss.
Highest rating of the night when he pointed out that Trump completely failed on the border. He didn't deliver on the border wall that he promised. He blew up the border deal that we have border as a campaign issue. So he scored really highly also when he mentioned Matthew 25 and how his faith guides and inspires his empathy for people, a quality that Trump and Vance so abundantly lack.
Lindy didn't just poke holes in Walz's story, she shredded it into Swiss cheese. She reminded everyone that polishing your medals doesn't erase the messy choices behind them. What makes this sting so hard isn't just that Walz looks inconsistent, it's that his everyman teacher vibe now feels more like a costume than the real thing. It's like discovering your favorite indie band was actually created in a boardroom to appeal to suburban Target shoppers. That's Walz, the Target brand candidate. And now that he's stepped into the national spotlight as Harris's VP pick, the scrutiny isn't just bright, it's blinding. Every flaw that could be ignored in Minnesota is now front page material. Lindy Lee's out there waving a neon sign that screams, "See this?" If Walz hoped to skate by on his cardigan charm, that dream's over. She didn't just share facts, she made them sting. And in politics, nothing lasts longer than a sting that sticks. Now his team's stuck between ignoring it or responding, and both are disasters waiting to happen. Ignoring Lindy is like ignoring a fire alarm. You can pretend it's not going off, but everyone else is still running for the exits.
It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget. Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life.
Addressing it is even trickier because stepping into Lindy's arena means walking straight into a storm of sarcasm and you're already bleeding. But here's the twist. It's not just about Walz anymore. It's about an entire political system built on image control. And Walz just happens to be the latest face caught mid-costume change. Lindy Lee is the commentator, gleefully pointing out that the Emperor's new clothes don't fit, and that's why this hit lands harder than a standard critique. One viral roast opens the floodgates, and suddenly journalists, rivals, and online detectives are tearing through Walz's record like it's a mystery novel. Once someone says, "Hey, there's a crack," everyone wants to see how deep it goes. Exposure doesn't stop with one post, it multiplies. Now Walz is trying to present himself as the calm co-pilot for Harris's campaign, while the internet jokes that his steady hand looks more like it's shaking a martini in an earthquake. Lindy lit the match, and now everyone's watching to see how big the fire gets. The best part, the political spin doctors are scrambling like chefs who forgot to preheat the oven, and it's delicious to watch.
Feedback. I want to take you back to the very first answer that he gave. Let's just remind ourselves, he sort of stumbled through. You know, right now the crisis in the Middle East is, you know, front and center of the global news agenda, and we would expect maybe that someone who was running to be the vice president would have more confidence. Let's remind ourselves of what happened.
October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
Walz's team now has to decide whether to triple down on that cozy cardigan charm or pretend nothing's happening. But spoiler alert, neither plan works. When Lindy Lee roasts you, it's not a debate. It's a full-blown barbecue, and the smoke lingers. The first defense is always, it's out of context because everything is these days. Walz could trip over a garden hose, and someone would still claim it was an inspiring leap. But once people spot the pattern, no number of actually statements can stitch it back together. The media reaction split fast. Some outlets still treat Walz like the lovable Midwestern uncle who brings hot dish to the potluck, brushing off Lindy's takedown as just another spicy post. But others smell blood in the water, and nothing draws clicks like political blood. Suddenly, every small compromise and contradiction from Walz's past is headline gold. What once lived in state-level footnotes is now national news, complete with dramatic music fit for a true crime documentary.
What do you think happened when he gave that answer, Lindy?
Well, as I mentioned before, J.D. Vance went to Yale Law School. He is seasoned, and I said this in the previous interview. This is what he does. He's slick and he's sharp, but Walz is a fundamentally good guy. And our focus group of battleground voters, mind you, understand that. They perceive that this is a down-to-earth guy, salt-to-the-earth guy who wants the best for the American people versus Vance, who is backed by Peter Thiel and was a venture capitalist and is working for his billionaire crony.
Walz isn't used to this kind of spotlight. It's a whole new battlefield. He's been coasting in the state-level sandbox where people forgive a little chaos as long as you smile and wave. But the national stage is ruthless. Every shoelace, every word, every photo gets fact-checked. You can't survive with just a calm tone and a fishing joke anymore. Now, under the microscope, Lindy made sure the lens was crystal clear. To everyday viewers, the irony writes itself. Walz, the man of the people, suddenly looks more like man of the script. His political persona now feels over-rehearsed, constantly tweaked for ratings. And the timing? Brutal. If this had happened years ago, he might have patched it up with a few photo ops and an op-ed about unity. But in this fiery election cycle, every move is dissected like a frog in biology class. Voters don't want leaders who promise to grow into the role. They want consistency right now.
I mean, I'm not on anyone's payroll. I'm not beholden to anyone. That's why I'm here telling the truth. I'm not here to gaslight anybody. This is just the truth.
What is the truth?
The truth is this is just an epic disaster. This is a $1 billion disaster. Actually, it was $1.018 billion, I think, right? There were $20 million or $18 million in debt.
Right.
It's incredible.
And Lindy Lee just exposed how fragile Walz's consistency really is. It's about as sturdy as a paper straw in a hurricane. Social media turned her takedown into a meme factory overnight, with clips labeled things like Walz's speed run of hypocrisy. When your image is Midwestern nice, but your record screams Midwestern chaos, the internet doesn't just reveal it, it amplifies it. Walz is finding out the hard way that once the online crowd decides you're the punchline, taking back control of the joke is nearly impossible. But beyond the laughs, this exposure matters, because politics runs on trust, whether it's real or just good marketing. Walz's whole appeal depends on that steady, trustworthy neighbor image, and Lindy tore that illusion apart. She showed that his authenticity was more costume than character. Once voters see the zipper on the mascot suit, good luck convincing them it's a real bear. And while other politicians have faced similar exposure, the timing and the messenger make this different. Lindy doesn't just critique, she entertains, and that's what makes it deadly.
Millions of that. I have friends that I have to be accountable to and to explain what happened, because I told them it was a margin of error race. I was promised, Jen O'Malley Dillon promised all of us that Harris would win. She even put videos out saying that Harris would win. I believed her. My donors believed her. And so they wrote massive checks. I feel like a lot of us were misled. And even on the night of election night, I looked somebody in the eye and I said, are we going to do this? Are we going to pull it off? She told me yes. And I asked somebody else, how are you feeling? He's like, we're going to win Iowa. And I was like,
that's what makes Lindy's approach so dangerous. Because in today's media world, no one shares boring critiques anymore. People spread the roasts, the sarcasm, the clips that make them laugh while nodding in agreement. That's how narratives explode, through entertainment disguised as accountability. Meanwhile, Walz's opponents are quietly celebrating with champagne. In politics, the worst hit isn't from your rivals. It's when someone outside the game exposes you, because that feels real and it sticks. And now the Harris campaign is sweating bullets. A VP pick is supposed to bring calm, not chaos. Walz was meant to be the reliable co-pilot, the guy who wouldn't rattle the moderates or outshine the lead. But instead of steady, he looks shaky. Instead of reassuring, he looks rehearsed. And that's political poison in a race where every attack ad is being sharpened like a medieval sword. What's wild is how fast the narrative flipped. Before Lindy's expose, Walz was barely on the national radar, just a background extra you'd Google once, then forget 5 minutes later.
What's your take?
My take is the most neglected part of home ownership is the gutters. It's personal for me.
This is Democratic vice presidential candidate Tim Walz making an appearance on the popular TikTok show Subway Takes.
Had problems with gutters before. You get your basement wet, you get ice dams, cause a lot of problems.
How often do you like looking at gutters?
I look quite often, surprisingly, because I kind of judge it. I try not to be judgmental on people, but when I see a well-tended gutter, it says a lot about someone.
But now he's front page news, not for his policies, but for his contradictions. It's the political version of being remembered not for your big movie role, but for tripping on the red carpet. Unforgettable, but for all the wrong reasons. And the more Walz tries to brush it off, the worse it gets. Shrugging looks like admitting guilt, smiling through it looks fake, and addressing it only keeps the story alive. It's a no-win situation. Walz built his brand on being the authentic, steady leader, but Lindy just peeled back the curtain to show how manufactured that image really is. It's like discovering that your organic label was slapped on the same factory-made product as the cheap stuff. Once people see the truth, they can't unsee it. And what's almost poetic is that Walz's downfall isn't from a scandal or corruption. It's from exposure. His brand is collapsing under the weight of its own contradictions. A slow-motion unraveling, death by 1,000 sarcastic cuts, each one spreading across social media until his image finally falls apart.